Welcome to Joint Sessions, Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. I'm Herb Barbot, former and first Director of Operations at the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. This podcast brings together policymakers, regulators, licensees, advocates, and industry leaders to talk through the realities of building a cannabis market in New York and what those lessons might mean beyond the state. In Season 3, we continue the conversation while we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. We look at how policy translates into practice and how practice may impact policy. Through it all, businesses must navigate change, all while trying to prepare for where the industry may be headed next. We aim to bring you thoughtful, candid discussions about what's working, what's evolving, and what still needs to be figured out. Thanks for joining us, and now here's the episode. My guests today are Tiffany Walters, founder of New York State Cannabis Connect, and Floyd Jarvis, Director of Cannabis Workforce and Business Development at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, part of the City University of New York. Welcome, Tiffany and Floyd.
Hi, thanks for having me, Floyd, Herb.
Well, thank you for taking the time today. Now, Tiffany, you've described Cannabis Connect's mission as giving everyone in New York State a fair, equitable chance in the cannabis industry. What was the moment or experience that made you decide to establish New York State Cannabis Connect? And how did your connection to Rochester and to communities most impacted by prohibition shape what you set out to create?
That's a great question, Herb. Thank you so much. Well, I'm from Rochester, and the city of Rochester is definitely a community that was disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So growing up in that community, watching cannabis become legal, thinking that New York would never legalize cannabis. When it did become legal, I had a background in daycare and I understood those regulations. So I started to follow really closely. And I knew I didn't want a license, but I wanted to be a resource for the community. Set out to establish New York State Cannabis Connect, to be that resource, to be that community connection, to be able to connect, community to education around cannabis jobs, to connect employers, to really kind of expose them to what those pathways look like. And so we've been at it for 5 years, and it's definitely because of where I come from that I have the outlook that I do on workforce in this industry and understand how powerful it could be when we're talking about communities disproportionately impacted and empowerment.
Oh, terrific. Now, Floyd, you come to this work from Canarsie, Brooklyn, and actually I'm from neighboring a neighborhood, East New York, from a community with deep cultural and spiritual ties to cannabis. And now you're directing the Cannabis Workforce and Business Development Program at BMCC. How did your background in community identity inform how you approach building a workforce program at BMCC?
Great question, Herb. So back in 2018, 2019, when I was a graduate student at the New School studying public and urban policy, the ideas of both the MRTA and the now disgraced Governor Cuomo's CRTA were being floated around, right? And what these would look like. Then a wonderful organization, DPA, Drug Policy Alliance, they started convening these meetings in New York City around what the communities mostly impacted and the persons directly impacted, what cannabis equity, this idea of cannabis equity would look like. We didn't want what happened in California at that time. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is like so long ago now, 6 years ago, like that was our fight, stopping what happened in California, preventing what happened in Cali from happening in New York. But then it unraveled into our own peculiar and particular nuanced issues. So that's how it began. And at these meetings, that evolved into the Start Smart New York Coalition, a team of persons and organizations that were heavily invested in making sure that this cannabis rollout was done right and the equitable way. And in these meetings, I was the only person that looked like myself. And when I say look like myself, I don't only mean black. I don't only mean black and male. I mean black male, bearded and locked and sighting up His Majesty and having ganja as a holy sacrament. So I said, you know what, Floyd, if you leave this coalition, no one would be here to speak on behalf of the Rastafarians who are in prison, who got deported, who died, who's here. The 70th precinct in New York City used to cut off anytime they found them with marijuana. I said, you know what, I got to stick this through. So I stuck it out for my community. And that's how I became involved in this fight.
Terrific. Now, both of you work at the intersection of education and community. What are the biggest structural barriers that you see preventing people from communities most impacted by prohibition from landing and keeping good jobs in the legal cannabis market?
So I think that one of the biggest barriers is understanding the pathways into cannabis. A lot of times across the state, what I see is people being pushed more into retail jobs,
Hmm.
not understanding the supply side of cannabis and what those jobs look like, and then jobs that just support the industry as a whole, what those career pathways look like. So I think there's lack of understanding on what pathways look like and then access to that. So certificates, when we're talking about certificates, or maybe validating experience that they already have. A lot of people that are in our communities have been doing that, but how do they translate that on their resume and and do that and feel safe about it as well, right? We talk about what Floyd just described. That's real. These are real people's experiences, and so how do we navigate that? How do we help them navigate that and find a place in cannabis? I think we're still trying to figure that out.
All right, Floyd?
I'll answer the question differently. Those persons with those structural barriers, they
Hmm.
come right to us at BMCC,
Okay,
and
terrific.
we educate them and we upskill them on the rudiments of the OCM, the rudiments of the MRTA. So, perfect example. Our program at BMCC, three-pronged program, we were charged with helping to create this new workforce.
Hmm.
So we looked at three different areas: cannabis security solutions, cannabis retail management, as well as cannabis manufacturing technicians. Persons with their New York State security licensing,
Hmm.
we brought them in and we upskilled them on how to take your security skill, your inventory skill, and bring this to a cannabis space. So really and truly, those those structural barriers
Hmm.
were broken down by August of 2023, when the governor, through the Department of Labor, funded us with a $2 million grant to start our cannabis workforce and business development training program along with Lehman College. Those same persons that so legacy market operator is someone who I like to the on the short side it's 5 years. I like to say 10, 15, 20 years,
Hmm.
but a person who at least 5 years prior to legalization, more than half of their income involved the sale, cultivation, distribution of
Hmm.
cannabis. That's a legacy market operator.
Right.
Those persons we brought in who might have a security guard license, who may have retail experience, who may have been a sous chef or a line cook, right? We bring those persons in. I'll say, okay, you have this skill. Now we're gonna upskill you. Now you're a manufacturing technician.
Now,
Now you
is that a certificate program? Is it a degree
yes,
granting?
it's a certificate. Yes, our program is a certificate program.
Okay.
Yes.
Just like Floyd said, that's one of the things New York State Cannabis Connect did too, was partner with BMCC to help them create these curriculums that met the needs of these communities, right? And so one of those was the general retail store manager. And so I love what how Floyd just described that. They created a pathway for those individuals to come directly to BMCC. And they also made it so it was flexible, both online and in person. It did a lot of workshops. They brought in a lot of expert speakers, and they really prepared the students. I got a chance to speak with one of their classes a few weeks ago, or their cohorts. And it's just amazing to the diversity of people that sit in their classes and the different fields and industries that they're coming from. So yeah, I commend Floyd and his team at BMCC for creating such great programming.
Now,
Yeah.
Tiffany, your organization also partnered with the State University of New York with some Hudson Valley colleges on a particular survey-driven initiative. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I would like to talk about that. So, yep, New York State Cannabis Connect partner with six SUNY colleges, SUNY Ulster, SUNY Sullivan, Orange, Dutchess, Rockland, And we partner with them to create a workforce survey. So it's the Hudson Valley Cannabis Workforce Blueprint. It's a pilot study, and we did it just in the Hudson Valley. And it was interesting the things that this survey found. So one, what we found was that the workforce demand extended beyond budtenders. So just
Mm.
like Floyd said, security, manufacturing, right? So what we found is that while employers did focus on retail, the other side of the industry wasn't getting their needs met. So we're talking about logistics, HR, accounting, marketing, engineering, things like that. There's still a need for training programs to be developed around that and sort of standards, right? We also found was that employers were complaining a lot about the lack of soft skills, right? That there weren't enough employees meeting that they didn't have customer service or people skills, that they're not reliable, they don't have good work ethic or professionalism. And so that's something that we think, more courses can be around. We know that there's a lot around hospitality, but maybe specifically on how to speak to cannabis consumers or regulations around that. So just making sure that they understand that. And then also really understanding the plant and the way it works and the way it works with the body is important.
Mm.
Um, and then another major thing that the survey found was that, and I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but obviously the supply side hires and creates significantly more jobs per licensee than the
Mm.
retail side. On average, a cultivator, processor, or distributor creates 23.3 full-time jobs, where retailer is 5.9, right? So we really should be looking at that, because that processing operation side of cannabis is creating substantially more jobs and there's a bigger need, but yet we're not seeing a lot of workforce programs being created around that.
Mhm.
So I think, if I could just lead with one thing, it would be that workforce development isn't just about training bud tenders. Our survey found a demand for workers across manufacturing, cultural, logistics, compliance, engineering, retail, while employers consistently identified professionalism, reliability, and customer service as their greatest workforce needs. One of the questions asked the employers about just the quality and of their workers and what was the biggest thing, and they said lack of qualified candidates, not being cross-trained. So yeah, we're really happy with that survey. We hope that it's some work that we can continue to do. We think it's needed, especially as OCM talks about creating a workforce working group.
Now, there's a difference between training someone for a cannabis job and then training someone to build a cannabis career. How are your respective programs thinking about advancement pathways, not just entry level placement, but really helping people move into management, ownership, or other ancillary professional roles, over time?
Great. So what we do at BMCC, what
Mhm.
we encourage to our prospective students, even if you are, let's say you've been smoking weed since you're 14, and you've been arrested for weed when you're 14, right? And then you're, because of these, coupled with other socioeconomic determinants of health, your job prospects aren't as affluent as someone else, right? With different socioeconomic determinants of health. So you take an entry level job as one of the persons that are trying to stop people from fare evasion, right? So in order to
Mhm.
do that, you have to take a security course for New York State to become certified, right? But then this bill passes and you say, hey, wait, I was arrested when I was, I don't know, 20 something. This might be me.
Mhm.
Do you think this fits me? Then you find out it does fit you, and you say, okay, I got the golden ticket. I can be an owner now, right?
Mhm.
We say yes, but why don't you take our cannabis security solutions course first? It's free, it's grant funded. When we're running our second retail management course, you're on the waiting list for that. But I think that the skills that you already know from security solutions, we can further upskill you to be a cannabis security solution specialist. No, you're not going to be at the door of your establishment, your dispensary, because it's yours
Mhm.
now. But it'll give you a better insight on, in the hiring process, on what to look for, because you have already done it. You understand? So what we do is we always encourage our students, whether you're coming in raw. No, you're not a C applicant. You're not nothing. You just want to get in the industry, and you may not even have your security license. Okay, we send you down the block to MEOC where you could go take the 8 or 16 hour course, and we always push our students and encourage, sorry, to take on ancillary things with cannabis. Don't just pigeonhole yourself and say, okay, I got to go and take it. Let me just look for other or look for moneyed people or resources. No, take our courses, because once you're in our courses, now you're gonna get all the OCM updates. Now you're automatically signed up to the CCRB meetings, as well as, forgive me, I forgot the other monthly meetings that the OCM has. Now you could see who these people are. Now you could go up to Albany. You get to really, really and truly understand this cannabis business at its nascent, at its beginning, which is a good thing. I know I went around the world, but I'm back home.
Now, Tiffany, you've done work with both the state university system and also with the city university system. Is there a cohesive approach that's going on, or are each system operating independently, in silos?
They're trying to communicate. I would say that because SUNY is so much bigger, you do see some CUNYs reaching out, but all of them aren't connected. So I do think that they're operating in silos, and I think that the needs are different. The type of operators that they support are different. Obviously, when we're outside of the city, we do have more of the supply tier side of the industry, whereas the city does have a lot more retailers. But I do think that there needs to be some type of conversations happening. I know that there was advisory boards that the CUNY set up, and there was ones that SUNY set up, but very rarely did you see any of them sitting on the same boards. So I do think that there needs to be some cohesion happening, especially when we're talking about trying to create standards. That's something that lacks. And when we talk about consumers and community, we want to make sure they're protected. We need to start ensuring that there's some basic standards that everybody has to follow. I'll give you an example. When we're talking about processing and manufacturing, yes, everybody has GMPs, right? But they're all using different type of machinery in order to process these materials, right? But do these people have a basic understanding of engineering? Do they have a basic understanding of those machines? Did they learn it there? Do they have a basic understanding of the safety? Are we ensuring that they know these things? So I think that courses like that, workshops like that can be created where everyone is taking that. And I would say OCM has tried to take that approach in some of the trainings that they have created online, but no, I think them creating the workforce working group is going to be good to get kind of input, because I think it's also going to take experts, and that's something that New York State Cannabis Connect does. We go to schools like Floyd, like BMCC, like CUNYs, like SUNY. We just did a tour this week with Monroe Community College, where we toured their engineering facility with licensees, processing licensees, but then we also brought them to see their facilities so that they can understand their needs and see it from a different perspective, right? These are people who work in manufacturing, medical manufacturing, automotive manufacturing, technology manufacturing. So being able to see that and correlate it, especially when we're talking about advanced engineering, I think that could help too. So
So now, the Office of Cannabis Management has a workforce page, and the State Department of Labor has its own cannabis employment and education department unit. So, in your opinion, has the state's workforce development infrastructure kept pace with the licensing rollout? What has OCM and the state gotten right, and where, would you say has maybe dropped the ball a little bit?
I think that when we're talking about the C team, which is the New York State Department of Labor team, they've done a lot to try to help licensees
Hmm.
navigate employment and hiring. And so they've created great worksheets for them, and how to navigate, how to sign up, how to hire, what's required. I think that they've done a great job. I think that having their tour that they do, trying to educate the community on jobs is good. But I don't think that like educating the community on actual pathways or where to get the information on where to take the courses like BMCC or these sort colleges, I don't think that part is getting out. And I definitely think that they could do a better job there. And yeah, I might come back to that question again here, but
All right,
go ahead.
Floyd.
No, the state's workforce idea has not kept pace with the licensing rollout. What the state got wrong
Mm-hmm.
was at the top by putting pressure on Chris Alexander to leave.
Mm-hmm.
He should still be there. Shout out to John Kajia. I know he's going to do an excellent job, but Chris should still be there. During that interregnum, I can speak to this directly. During that interregnum between Chris and John, there was minimal, if any, contact with, I can speak from my director of BMCC Campus Workforce and Business Development Training Program. There was minimal interaction with us and OCM during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
And this was right after the TAP, Technical Assistance for Licensing Application grant, was rolled out. That was very, 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 very bad, very highly unwise, right? I hope the recording catches this. Highly and grossly unwise, because at the moment, obviously the TAP grant, which is Technical Assistance for Licensing Application, it was given out because the OCM needed help in doing this. So they charge other entities. During that moment when you're giving it out, the OCM is in flux. I understand there were different competing reasons, but my judgment, grossly unwise, which led and leads to people still being in the November queue from 2023, and we're in 6/11/2026. So the state could have did a better job of that. DOL, again, keeping it a buck. DOL started off good. I wish Daniel Kaufman was still here. We had a great relationship with Daniel. He was on our advisory board. We worked with him, but once he left, it kind of lagged. So print that.
I can agree with some of that sentiment. Definitely when and you know what it goes back to? Again, workforce labor. The Department of Labor does not have enough people. When they first started they had 4 people. They were great. Like Floyd said, they actually started Catch a Contact, which was a statewide career summit that New York State started. And we funded them, and we did it on a statewide level in partnership with the Department of Labor, right? And then OCM, who was short staffed, then took that initiative up and started to do workforce initiatives across the state as well. But again, we're talking about an institution that is not fully staffed yet. And I see that gap when they still need help. And I do see that gap. And I think I'm going to lean into that C. Like you said, that from the time that Chris was there, and even Damian Fagan, right, who had these great plans, Brian Farmer, who had these great plans, who all sat on C to create these incubators, and you actually saw them out in the community trying. They were looking for spaces, they were talking to the community, they were interacting in a way that felt meaningful. And then when they were removed from those roles, some left, some were removed, you did see that. You don't see that even now. Like they have said that they want to start the workforce working group, but you do not see them trying to uplift that incubator or really lean into workforce or funding it. And I have to say this because Floyd's programming ends July 31st. SUNY colleges, their funding ends July 31st. So we have these great people who have devoted years now to uplifting these programs, to ensuring that they are meeting the needs of communities disproportionately impacted and meeting the needs of the MRTA, but now they're having to end. And so we're losing all these great people and all these great programming. And honestly, that data as well, right? It's all going to just be there. And I do think it's imperative that the state really think about this and start.
Yeah, and that brings me to my final question, which is, if each of you could put one specific, concrete demand on OCM's desk tomorrow, whether it's a structural change, a program, or some kind of funding commitment, what would that be? Tiffany, you first, and then Floyd.
I think that I would ask OCM to really take their workforce working group seriously and fund it, and start with research and understanding the needs of the industry, and the needs of the community and the licensees first. And then from there, really investing in these programs, in these colleges and in these institutions. I would ask that now. They
Floyd.
need it.
I have a lot of requests and demands, so it's kind of difficult doing this for 3 years, peeling back the onions and getting to see everything in its rawness and entirety. To ask me, it's 6/11. You said July. Our program sunsets 6/30. So to ask me, the director of the CUNY Cannabis Workforce and Business Development Training Program, of a program that sunsets in 2 weeks, what would I ask? What am I asking? Who is this asked for? From the government, from the governor, or the OCM?
Well, I said OCM, but it could be OCM. It could be the governor's office, Department of Labor. Make it the state.
It's a lot, man. That New York helps thing needs to go to the OCM to remove the barriers from people that don't have or didn't have state employment experience to be able to work for and with the OCM.
So that and just explain what New York Help is.
I believe New York Helps is when it was a law or act that, so there's civil service, right? From in working for New York State, you have to take an exam or have to been working in New York State in order to get a state job. If you worked for the SLA, the State Liquor Authority, when the OCM opened up in April of 2021, you had a higher chance of getting a job working for the SLA, never touching cannabis in your life, never being a part of the Start Coalition in your life, never advocating for cannabis in Albany in your life, as opposed to someone who's been doing that for the past 5 years, right? And now you're in this office. Yes, you have what's required by the state, but really and truly, you don't have what's required of the office, because the office doesn't need an SLA employee or a Department of Corrections CO in cannabis. They need true legacy market operators or former legacy market operators or persons that have a peculiar or unique relationship with the plant in this office to prevent a lot of these mishaps.
All right, Tiffany and Floyd, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. Where can folks find out more about the work that you're each doing? Tiffany.
You can find more about the work I do at nyscannabisconnect.com. I also want to say that I'm a board member of the Empire Green Standard Alliance, and you can find us at greenstandardalliance.org. We're the only consumer advocacy group in New York State, so please join.
And I should say Tiffany and I work on that board together. Floyd.
Yes, you can find me next 2 weeks at CUNY BMCC, filling out this arduous report for our funders. And you could also Google me, Floyd Jarvis.
All right, Floyd, and good luck with that. I hope you get continued funding.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Joint Session, Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps more listeners find the show. In addition, please share this episode with colleagues, advocates, and anyone interested in the state of cannabis in New York. Joint Session is produced by me, Herb Barbot, together with executive producer Robert Curtis from SimLabs. You can follow Joint Session on Instagram at jointsession.pod, on Blue Sky at jointsessionpod.bsky.social, and on LinkedIn at Joint Session Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions on topics, reach out to me at herb.jointsession@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Herb Barbot. Thank you for listening.